that they can also learn some things from all this thing that we are doing, and then why this thing is very important that we disseminate this information and we make knowledge go viral. So that is the idea. So Bumi and team, if you're there, can you please play back the good? Thanks a lot.
Hello, dear research colleagues. What are the challenges you are facing? Are you a researcher? Are you in need of the nearest laboratory with state-of-art equipment to execute your project? Are you currently planning to contact a laboratory or research host for your research visit or bench work? Are you a laboratory? Are you looking for increased research patronage and visibility of your laboratory? Are you interested in establishing robust research collaboration both locally and internationally? Generate revenues on laboratory equipment and sustainability of equipment maintenance? Are you an equipment manufacturer or buyer? LabingGate Incorporated, Canada, is here with an unparalleled solution by introducing LabingGate Digitalized Laboratory Innovation, LDLI, a one-stop platform to meet all your research needs. LDLI is a user-friendly platform with a capacity of over 10 million equipment, more than 100,000 laboratories, more than 5 million researchers, offering effective networking across the globe. Execute your related research transactions with ease today by signing up on www.labingate.com/register. We look forward to having you on our platform. LabingGate, the gateway to world's laboratories. Hello, dear research colleagues. What are the
Thank you
challenges
so
you are
much.
facing?
Thank you so much. I think we have a lot of things to go through. So I'm just going to give you a bit of synopsis for those of us who don't know what LabingGate is all about. So LabingGate is a company that is incorporated in Canada, based in Canada. So the idea is that a lot of the people that we work in sciences and all this STEM, and now we call it this STEAM fields, that is science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. We find it very difficult, especially coming from this part of Africa. We find it very difficult to get to good laboratories, to get to good equipment, to use this equipment to do our research. So that is what led to the birth of LabingGate, where some people actually get to a point where they say, look, how can we leverage from other people? So for instance, there are a lot of our colleagues that are working in advanced countries. For instance, there are people in Canada, in the US, in Germany, in Korea, where they have advanced and sophisticated equipment, state-of-the-art laboratories. So the idea is that, sorry, can we mute? My technical team, can you see if anybody is not muted, can you mute the person for me? We don't want, yeah, thanks a lot. So that is where LabingGate came to be, where we create a safe space for people to be able to work. So for instance, I am in South Africa, and if I have equipment that somebody in Nigeria is doing a research needs, we can be able to link the person, and then they pay a fee, and so that they can be able to use those resources. So it's a way where we want to make it more, look at the LabingGate as the Uber for scientific research laboratory sharing. That is basically the idea, because we don't want to say, because we don't have the equipment, therefore we want the world to leave us, and then we will always play catch up. And also that is the idea. Currently, we also know that the World Education Forum report, it stated that Africa trains about 100 scientists per million people. And if that thing needs to change, it means that we should be able to have a lot of people going into research, doing research that speak directly to the needs of the African continent. Our needs are basically categorized in about 8 or 9, if I'm not mistaken. That is, we have needs of, we have issues around education. Some people said Katajiwood census, we are miseducated. We have issues around healthcare. We don't have primary healthcare facilities. We have a lot of healthcare people on the platform that will talk to it. Sorry, I'm rushing a bit because I want to get to the juice of this thing. And I'm also interested in sitting down and shush so that others can talk. And then we also have issues around global terrorism. So for instance, people say that when you go to the West, you have issues around immigration. When you come to the South, you have issues around xenophobia. When you go to the East, you have Al-Shabaab. In the West, also you have Boko Haram. And when you go to the northern part, you have Maghreb. So it means that Africans are running away from Africa. And that means that we have to find a way to keep them to stay in Africa. And that means we have to do away with a lot of the brain drain. So if we can create a safe haven for people to be able to do research, to be able to go and spend 1 or 2 months at an advanced laboratory, carry our experiment, and publish the result to drive the African agenda, the Agenda 2063, then it means that we are in the right same. If we can drive the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN United Nations, then we are also moving in the same direction. That is how LabingGate was born. So if you are here and you are doing any of your sciences, you are doing any of your engineering, please join us. Just go to the LabingGate website. My colleagues will put it on the chat box. Go there, check what we are doing. Also, LabingGate also provide platforms where people can actually get consultation to go to study in various universities in Canada. Since the company is actually based there, you pay a little token. People give you in-depth knowledge on what to do and what not to do. It is in light of some of these things that this webinars came to be. So what we are trying to do is that we believe that in this generation, lack of information will lead to deformation, and good access to information leads to transformation. And if you have knowledge that you can glean from, that become wisdom. And if you transfer that wisdom to your day-to-day application, then you become a better person. You don't want to sit there and one day tell your kids that, I was also here and I couldn't do it because I gave a lot of excuses. So because people like to give excuses, now we want to bring the expert to you. And based on that, today we'll be dealing with a very serious topic that has been an albatross around our neck. Can we mute that person? Thanks. Yeah, my technical people are doing a very fantastic job. Thank you so much. So today we are going to look at issues around academic bullying. We started this webinar some 4 months ago. Every month we have this webinar. And today we are talking about the issues around academic bullying. First of all, we started with how you can apply for grants and what are the 7, we call it rituals for grant application. Then we went to the tenet of a university education, where we look at if you're doing your first degree, your master's, and you're doing your PhD or postdoc, what are the tenets that you should actually get? What does that particular stage of your learning, what should it do for you? And then we've also looked at those things. And today we are actually looking at academic bullying. Last month, I think we had Dr. Tenza that talks about the postgraduate experience and how the postgraduate and supervisor relationship is something that one needs to manage very well. It's like a marriage that you need to make sure that at least you provide yourself a cushion, you support yourself well, and also make sure that you are not being abused unnecessarily. So thank you so much for coming. So today we will be talking about academic bullying. And I'm not gonna say anything because I don't know it. I am also here to learn. And today we have 2 very smart daughters of the continent that are gonna walk us through and share their thoughts and views with us. And also we welcome seasoned and members that are in this webinar. We know there are professors from Pakistan. We know there are people from Nigeria, people from Tanzania, South Africa. And so we have people from the US, there are a lot of people on this particular call that are coming from so many places. And we are grateful to have you guys today. And so let me just go ahead and introduce the person. The first person here, it's basically Amina. Amina is a registered psychologist. She holds a master's degree in community-based counseling psychology, and she is currently pursuing a PhD in psychology with the University of the Witwatersrand, South Africa. Amina, I say to you, Wit gives you the edge. Wit's for good. My people, don't be jealous here. She has clinical experience working with torture and trauma survivors who are forced migrants and other marginalized and disenfranchised group. That is Amina, you can see in her beautiful spectacle there with a very beautiful hairstyle. She did say that it is a trademark. So Amina, thank you so much for coming. Her key areas of focus including working with survivors of violence-related trauma, continuous and post-traumatic stress, anxiety, mood, and personality-related impairment. I mean, today you helped me diagnose my bipolar tendencies here. Thank you so much, Amina. She also conducts psychological assessments, career, occupational placement, intelligence, aptitude, personality, neuro, and projective assessment with a passion for providing psychometric support to less advantaged group in order to facilitate access into organizations and systems that enhance their quality of life. with regards to research, Amina has a particular interest in the intersection of inequality, identity, and violence, and is an enthusiast for raising awareness of mental health services and promoting psychological well-being. She advocates for access to mental health and rehabilitation services, awareness raising of inequality, and human rights violation. Amina, thank you so much for coming. I'm gonna go to the next. Where are you? Yeah, let me go to the next person quickly. So Amina, once again, thanks for coming. I see the next person. She's around some ocean right there. I don't know what she's doing with the sea there, but she will tell us. Her name is Dr. Tenza. She holds a PhD in public health also from the University of Witwatersrand. Sorry guys, I didn't do this. They just showed up, so I didn't bring them from Wit. They just started to come. She is currently a senior lecturer at the Northwest University Faculty of Health Sciences and honorary researcher at the University of Witwatersrand School of Public Health. Her research interests are in health systems, policies, quality in healthcare, and patient safety. Dr. Tenza is passionate about postgraduate supervision. Currently, she supervises postgraduate research for masters and PhDs. She's a member of a scientific committee for UNUMIQ research entity at the Northwest University. She's held research projects successfully through her collaboration with national and international level. She's the founder of GM4 HP, that's Global Mentorship for Health Professionals, supporting emerging researchers with research skills and career development. So, good doctor, thank you so much for coming. I'm now going to hand over to you. I think that you can start sharing your screen, but please, these are some of the house rules that we have. And I must also say that I'm coordinating 2 meetings at the same time. So when I hand over to you, I'm going to jump onto my phone, and then I'm going to be doing the other meeting whilst I'm going. So I'm just at the background with you. And so you will take this thing forward to the very end. And may I also suggest that, yes, somebody say, please share Amina's contact and email address. Yes, those things will be shared as time goes on. Please, can I suggest that you mute your mic and also your video, so that your camera, not video, your camera. And then only the people that are supposed to be speaking will be sharing, so that we can save some bandwidth. Yes, I can see your screen. You can now take it to presenter mode quickly, and then we can see what you do. So my people, we welcome you all to today's platform. And on behalf of the Labingate family, I want to welcome you all to this family, and let us have a good time. And it's good to be learning something and enjoying it whilst doing it. So Dr. Tenza, big sister, over to you. And Amina, please do your thing.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Desmond. I would like to welcome all the audience again. I'm Dr. Sabelile Tenza, and I'm with Miss Amina Mwaikambo. And as introduced, we are going to speak about exploring academic bullying, redefining postgraduate supervision relationships. On that note, I would like to say good evening, good morning, good afternoon, and good day to everybody, everywhere you are situated. And thank you for your time that you've decided to sit and be part of us in this webinar. So, an outline for today's talk, we really want to talk briefly, me and Amina, and then we would want to have a very robust discussion with everybody who's here. And on that note, I would like to say that feel free and be relaxed and feel at home, and know that we value your inputs as much as you'll be learning from us, but we also expect that we'll learn a lot from you. And this is really, we want to have that kind of safe space where we can share experiences and work together to refine the postgrad supervisions. So what we have today, we're going to have an introduction for this presentation, and we'll talk about exploring academic bullying And Amina will deal with that. And the nature and the extent of bullying, she will also deal with that. And the signs you may be a bully, she will also deal with that. And I'll come in to talk about the signs of an unhealthy supervision relationships. And thereafter, she will come in to talk about managing your mental health while negotiating uncomfortable relationships. And I will come in again to talk about the envisaged redefined relationships. And we will conclude. After concluding, we'll then take the baton to the audience, and that's where we would invite you to start sharing what and how you can contribute to redefining these relationships. And we really would like to encourage everyone to talk, to share their experiences. You don't have to mention the person involved or the institution's name that is involved, but I think it's very important that we share this and we start having this kind of a discussion. We are of the opinion that we really, it's kind of like scratching the surface, because this kind of a conversation is a conversation that it's not very usual to deal with, and hence we really want to appreciate your inputs as well. So sorry about that. So this webinar is a follow-up, like Desmond has said. It's a follow-up from the previous one, which was around April or early May, which focused on bridging the gaps in postgrad supervision. Within that webinar, we realized that relationships management took a center stage. As a result, a decision to have a follow-up webinar focused just on exploring academic bullying was then decided upon. But then on our discussion, we used the word exploring because we want to recognize or acknowledge that we are not here to put the rules on how to manage academic bullying or post-grad supervision relationships, but we understand that we're really scratching the top of the surface, and we really want to use the word exploring because we want to say everybody sees the academic bullying from his position, and that's what this discussion is about today. So myself, as having been introduced, I do supervise master's and PhD students, and I'm also very passionate about postgrad mentoring or mentoring emerging researchers. As a result, this topic is I'm very passionate about today's topic. And Amina is introduced as a postgrad student, and as a master's and a PhD, having the experience of both master's and PhD experience of being a postgrad and also being a psychologist. We thought then we could share our personal our experiences or our views. And on that note, we would also want to say that as much as we are affiliated with the organizations we are affiliated with, our views today, they are really about how we view the notion of academic bullying and the postgraduate supervision. So I would like to then hand over to Amina.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. Thank you so much for having me on this platform. I think being a psychologist and being in academia has, I was very enticed by this topic because I obviously have my own journey as well in academia, being supervised at undergrad, honors, master's, and now PhD level, and then just kind of thinking about what it means for me in terms of how I have engaged with my supervisors and how I've understood myself as a student. So first and foremost, I think, what is the most important thing is to understand that every single supervisor and every single student is a person. And what defines us then as people is our background, our histories, you know, how our personality structure is, what kind of character do we have? You know, obviously we've seen in Africa, we all have different levels of access to resources, different levels of privilege, and that also comes in, you know, tune into how we develop as people. Also, if we're sitting in academia, we are still people who have motivations and drives. We're there for a particular reason, and that also then comes into play in the different relationships and how we interact with others, how we understand ourselves. So every single person, whether you are a student or you're a supervisor, you have all of that background, you have all of that stuff that kind of sits in your relationships with others in the space of academia. And I think one of the things that we have to know is just generally as the world is structured, there are always going to be hierarchies. You know, they represent a sense of structure. They represent how the world kind of organizes itself. And unfortunately, what it then also does do, because we have our hierarchies, it then starts to perpetuate, when it's not handled well, it perpetuates a sense of inequality, and we have these unequal, you know, like these power dynamics. So, you know, we have to think about a person who has a position of power, what do they do with it? You know, so if you are a supervisor, there is an element of power that you have. What do you do with it? And when we have hierarchies, we do have to kind of think about what healthy leadership should look like. But when somebody who is higher up in the system, you know, doesn't have a healthy sense of self, and they haven't been able to kind of work on their mental health and how that impacts the different spaces that they're in, that filters into the academic systems. And this is where we then start to see these relationships between supervisors and students that are not necessarily healthy, and we can see the academic bullying. Next slide, please. Next slide.
Oh, I'm sorry about that, Amina.
No problem. I can just continue as you're sorting out the slide. It's not a problem. So, you know, when we think about what bullying is, you know, it's an act of intimidation or being aggressive with another person who you typically may perceive as either weaker than you, or maybe even what we would say is less competent. So, I mean, sometimes when you talk about bullying, we think about it from an adolescent perspective, but this is something that does happen a lot with adults. And you'll find that bullying can be overt and can be covert. So sometimes it's very underlying. You might not necessarily be able to see that this person, the way they're treating me isn't a good way of communicating. You know, they're doing things that make me feel intimidated. They're doing things that make me leave the experience feeling hurt or feeling unsafe or feeling vulnerable. And I mean, a person who is a bully, they typically, you know, habitually, they harass or intimidate or humiliate the people that they're interacting with in a way for them to start to feel a little bit superior. And this act of intimidation, or what you could then say is a maladaptive type of communication, it then filters into how you understand that person and how you start to understand yourself. So bullying can be very emotional. It can be emotional, it can be verbal, it can be physical. There are different ways in which a person interacts with you, which you then can start to experience as bullying. And it will obviously be different depending on the context, depending on what the hierarchical structure looks like, and how much power, for example, a person does actually have. And what then happens in the system, the academic system, is that when you have, for example, supervisors who can be bullies, you start to see that there's a ripple effect, one, in the academic system, but then there's also a ripple effect in the life of the person who is being bullied. And the person who is being bullied, then they start to experience like a sense of low self-worth. You know, so you're interacting with a person, you're in a process with a person of developing, let's say it's a research. And when you don't feel safe with that person, it's in the context of your research, but it filters into your everyday life, because your sense of self-worth then starts to be questioned. You start to question your capacity to actually complete whatever the task is. And I mean, all of that will become natural because you're sitting there in a space with a person who you're kind of second guessing everything that you need to do, you know? And what I've kind of seen that happens where people then do struggle to relate with in these academic spaces is that if you're being bullied, you may then start to experience a sense of anxiety and a sense of fear even. So, you know, in postgrad, you're typically more of an adult, you know, but you're finding that another adult makes you feel very afraid. You know, you start to develop a sense of anxiety when you need to interact with them. And there's this kind of threat of being attacked or feeling like you're going to be attacked or being belittled, and that then comes into play. Those are the kinds of signs that show you that there is a possibility that there's academic bullying that does start to kind of happen there. And, you know, apart from the anxiety, another thing that then to develop in the person is like a sense of depression, because you're going into a space, there's this idea that I can do this. I'm in academia, I'm in postgrad, you know, so typically you'll think, okay, I'm predominantly high functioning, but then there's this thing that just isn't working. I'm relating with this person and I always come out of the space feeling like, I just can't get this right, or I thought this was where I was going, but it's not where I'm going. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel like I can speak up. And there's this sense of like this feeling of sadness that then starts to come because you're feeling demotivated, you're second guessing yourself, you're questioning your worth, and then that starts to filter into your mental health. Next slide, please. So, you know, the thing about bullying, and I think the thing about a lot of different types of violence, is that there's this presumption that the person knows what they're doing. And yeah, sometimes a person is aware of how they're exerting their power on the next person, but sometimes they're not. So it's very important that even as we're looking at these signs that you could be a bully, you're actually kind of thinking about how you relate with the next person. You know, how do you treat a person who you typically on a hierarchy, you might be higher up than them. And these are things that are very important for us to all be able to reflect on, because I think some of the cycles of bullying that you do then start to see in academia, the different signs, the different cycles that you start to see in academia, you'll find that a person is treated a particular way and then they start to then treat the next person the same way. And this is something we see even in adolescent bullying, you know? So a person who bullies might not necessarily be that, know that they are bullying a person. And this is because a person might be sitting with their own insecurities. I'm sorry, please maybe go to the previous slide. They might be sitting with their own, thank you. They might be sitting with their own insecurities, their own kind of self-worth. Sometimes you find that a person has experienced trauma in the past. And because of that, this is how they see themselves in the world. They see themselves as maybe lesser, or they see themselves as not inadequate. So what they do is that they project a lot of those feelings onto the next person, right? And what that actually does is that when you project these feelings, you start to see that fear in somebody else, and it gives you the sense of power, right? And essentially what the bully is doing is they're trying to create an environment where they don't feel inadequate, where they don't feel insecure, where they don't feel like they're just not doing what they should be doing. This is essentially why people then bully. But then we then start to see how that conduct then kind of is experienced in society or in academia. So I put this section in this talk because it is important for us to always be able to reflect, you know, do you have power over other people and what do you do with it? Is there something that you do in order for you to get a certain type of gain? And if you are using that power to get a sense of gain in your own personal space in academia, then that could be a sign that you might be a bully. If you think about your thoughts and your words and your actions, have there been times where, you know, people say that, you know, you don't understand what I'm saying, or you're saying things and people kind of misunderstand them, or you say things and you notice that a person feels hurt, you know, those might be signs that you could be bullying a person. If, for example, you do hurt the next person and they feel like they can't say anything, those are also signs. Also, if you find that people tend to not critique your behavior or your thoughts or your conduct, you know, if people generally feel like they can't say, no, this is wrong, or kind of question you, then those are other signs that you might intimidate people. And then obviously, you know, there are times where we're interacting with our supervisors or with our students. I mean, our relationships are always going to be dynamic, and there are going to be times where you go and you offend the next person. But if you don't apologize, or you don't feel the need to apologize, that then is something that you need to reflect on. What are the reasons why you feel like, no, I'm right in the situation, or I'm typically right in the situation. And regardless of how the next person feels, I refuse to apologize. I refuse to bring myself to a place where I'm accommodating that there's some sort of a disruption in our relationship. You know, thinking about that, the point of departure of that need to not apologize, that need to not, you know, engage with that person with how they're feeling, you know, that will tell you something about your own conduct and how you perceive yourself in relation to the next person. And then you're finding that sometimes with bullies, they do apologize, but you'll find that it's because they just don't want the drama, or they don't want to have to interact with a higher level of conflict or that kind of thing. But just generally, there's no sense of remorse. You know, those are also other signs. And I think another really big one is, you know, how do people describe you? If people say things like, yeah, you need to be very quick with this person because their level of patience is not very high, or this person is very determined or very pushy. These are some of the things that you need to be able to think about, and how are those being experienced by the people around you. And I put down here as well, this notion of being passive aggressive. So sometimes the bullying is covert and sometimes it's overt, you know, and it's in the things that you do. So let's say, for example, the student, you know, disappears for a little while, and then they reach out to you and you just kind of drop a line or something to let the person know that, I see that you're back, but I'm not prepared to engage with you. Whereas you could just say, you know, I'm very disappointed in how you've disappeared and stuff like that. And then you can communicate with this person. But this idea that I'm going to send you a sense of communication, but I'm not going to let you know, you're just going to sit with the discomfort. That's what we start to experience as passive aggressiveness in academia. And if you're finding that you have an inclination towards that, those could be, you might need to look at your own conduct in relation to the next person. So I think from here, Dr. Tenza will just kind of jump in, and I'll be back in a little bit.
Okay, thank you very much, Amina. Yes, on that note, so I would like to just unpack the signs of an unhealthy relationship in postgrad supervision. But before I talk about the unhealthy relationship, I thought it's very important for me to take us back to what is a healthy relationship and what is the goal of postgrad supervision. So the postgrad supervision's goal mainly, it's 2 or 3 in case of the inclusion of a co-supervisor. So it will be a postgrad candidate, supervisor and co-supervisor, or postgrad candidate and a supervisor who has a project or a relationship that is going to last for a stipulated period of time, which equals to the time of the postgrad period of that particular student. And the main goal of the engagement is to engage, sharing knowledge, and directing all the actions towards the completion of the project. This doesn't only focus on just achieving the thesis, dissertation, or research report, or completing the report, but the activities they are really focusing on making sure that the postgrad candidate is able to develop the skills that are necessary to conduct the research. And this also includes some mentorship, coaching, and there are many other activities that really focused on making sure that at the end of the goal, or at the end of the journey, the candidate is a matured or is a qualified researcher at the level of the training that the person was registered on, whether in master's or a PhD. So we discussed that, I had discussed that in our previous webinar on the purpose of the supervision. But the reason I bring this in is because we cannot say the postgrad supervision relationship is healthy unless it get us to meet the goals of the relationship. So I take a stance that this healthy postgrad supervision relationship, it has to be peaceful, in a sense that there should be a way that the two, or the supervisor and supervisee, are able to communicate in a decent manner that is professional and respectful. And this healthy relationship is guided by clear communication and being responsive. So in this space, I thought, what exactly defines the healthy relationship? It is it's an ability to perform all the activities that the supervisor or the supervisee would have performed if he wanted to nurture the relationship, any other relationship, so that it gets to the goals that are desirable. So I then take a stance to say an unhealthy relationship then is any behavior that undermines the goals and the business of the supervision agreement. And this can be disrespect in a way that maybe any of the parties doesn't speak well to the other one, or there is poor communication. This may also include a supervisor or supervisee disappearing without notification, or just being non-responsive. Or the signs of unhealthy relationship also can be seen on the progress. There could be signs like poor progress or poor quality of the product, or lack of submissions. For in the case of the student may just not submit anything to the supervisor because he's just tired of this journey and this engagement, or this supervisor may just not even respond to anything, and the student may sit for months and months waiting for feedback, and there may not be feedback. And as part of identifiers of a healthy relationship, I also just didn't write here, would like to add that priorities, we put our priorities on anything that we value. So lack of prioritizing supervision relationship is also a sign that that relationship is not healthy, or it may be a sign, it may be a symptom, or it may even be a root cause. It may then result to an unhealthy relationship, the failure to prioritize the relationship. And the other signs could really be silence and lack of productivity. And sometimes they come in the manner of having excuses that dominate discussion. Every time the supervision meeting, they evolve around explaining why things have not been done, instead of looking at the way forward on what has been done, or having discussions about the quality and the work at hand and how to get the work moving forward. But then should these excuses start to dominate discussions, and all the time there's somebody who didn't do his part, then it may be a sign that the supervision relationship is not good. And then I've already spoken about the absent student or absent supervisor. But also some signs, it's the fear of it. When you start having fear of talking about certain problems, then you realize that these are other signs that something is not going right. And then if you feel over-criticized as a candidate, a postgrad candidate, or you feel like you have no sense of direction, you don't know what to do, and you don't know who to speak to, that may be a sign that you are now walking on eggshells. You really don't know what to do about the relationship or even about the project. And also another sign would be the feeling of being demotivated. And this can either be the student being demotivated to continue with the studies, or a supervisor being demotivated to coach the project because of how really the experience is not so good. And I would like to hand over then to Amina.
So, I mean, one of the important things about the human experience is that there's some relationships that are going to be easy and there's some that are going to be difficult. And as adults, it is important for us to be able to negotiate the different relationships and kind of figure out the easy ones, what do we learn from them, and the difficult ones as well, what do we learn from them? So, I think there's this idea that because it's academia, we just need to I don't know, change a supervisor, change a student or whatever, but that is also reflective of how we have learned how to manage difficult spaces. And so having a very difficult relationship with your supervisor, with your student, it is important to acknowledge how you contribute to the relation dynamic and how it then impacts you. Because even when somebody is a bully, you have to then be able to see, okay, what is happening here? Am I able to create healthy boundaries? And am I able to then manage them? So if, for example, your supervisor is very pushy, for example, and they want something, they want it at this particular time, and if you're not able to manage that time, you should be able to at least with them and then say, okay, fine, I can do this in this particular frame, but it might not be all of what you want, so you're kind of creating a boundary, healthy boundaries, where you're also saying things like, okay, this person is emailing me or contacting me on weekends, after hours, and that causes a lot of anxiety for me. So you just make sure you don't respond to those emails, And I know that it sounds like, no, but I need to get things done. But the truth is that when you are in a difficult relationship with somebody, you have to have that sense of boundaries so that you can even emotionally prepare yourself, so what are your triggers. That when they speak to you in a particular way, if they raise their voice or if certain words when they're communicating with you, that's a trigger, so you're aware of it. And when you hear it and there's like an emotional response, you're saying, okay, this is what's happening with me right now. I'm getting upset. This person is doing this thing again. But you're kind of having that internal dialogue, and that internal dialogue will help you to regulate. So you're not necessarily going to respond to that person in that particular way, to have like this very tense kind of communication. And because maybe this person is more superior to you, you can't have that conversation. So you're just kind of throwing things out and, they're coming back and it becomes very tense. And then if the person does have a personality that inclines towards bullying, you'll find that what they then start to do is they start to punish you in very kind of covert ways. So it's in little things or making you review something that you've reviewed, But when I'm saying all of these, we're talking about situations where you feel like this person is not treating you well. They are belittling me, or they're humiliating me, or they're intimidating me. And I don't think that that is okay, So kind of creating those boundaries will help you so that they're not spilling into so many different areas of your life. So what your supervision time and your supervision space looks like, and you create that boundary. You mentally prepare yourself. I need to go and see this person. I know it might be difficult, and I'm ready to go. You're emotionally preparing yourself. And then after that, you find ways to disconnect. So even when I say find like a self-care thing to do after the interaction, even doing something like, let's say, that you're going to meet your supervisor, try as much as you can to schedule your supervision times maybe towards the end of the day, so that you can then end your day. And maybe you can do something like go for a run. You can go and meet somebody, but you can do something that creates a sense of calm and peace, and it communicates self-care to you. Because then what that happens that if you have these supervision sessions, maybe early on in the day, and you need to go and interact with other people, you're carrying all of that stuff because you must move, because life is like that. You must go back to your job, or you must go back to your next class, and it filters in, and you're finding that now it's kind of spreading into many different areas of your life. So just kind of creating that boundary, making sure you have you can do, just kind of like offload. Find a safe space, even if there's somebody, a friend that you have that that you can debrief with them. That's something that you can do to just kind of create a sense of containment. It is very important to manage your mental health in academia, just generally. How you have a tough relationship, whether with the lecturer or the supervisor, how are you now ensuring that your mental well-being is being taken care of? And I think the final one, and I think this is very important, is that
I don't know if it's just me, Amina, I can't hear you.
Yes, Amina, I think we cannot hear you. Maybe, I think it's, can you guys hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I think she probably experiencing some challenges. So I think that Tenza can jump in, then she can take over when she gets in.
Okay. Can you hear me, colleagues?
Yes, I can hear you. So it means everybody can hear you.
Okay, okay, that's good. So it's fine. We'll go back to that point that Amina was making there. I like it when she said it's very important to make sure that you understand and remind yourself what was the purpose of the relationship to start off with. So we can just wing that part later on. But now I think on that note, she was really taking us through to what can you do and how can you navigate between looking after your mental health and at the same time making sure that you can manage these difficult relationships. So I am going to take you through to what are the envisaged redefined relationships. And really on this conversation or on this section, I have drawn from existing literature on what students expect of PhD supervision and what supervisors expect of their PhD supervision. And I'm just going to talk through that, and then I'll take us through to what are these envisaged relationships. So really the students, the literature indicates that students, even at PhD level, they expect to be inducted in the program, and they expect, they understand that supervisors are the primary link to the institution, and as a result, then they expect assistance with orientation in this institution, and then they expect to be assisted in choosing a topic, and they also they admit to be knowing a little about PhD and its requirements, and hence then they require guidance and they require direction, and they expect timely and constructive feedback, and they expect regular contact with supervisors and to be mentored. And on that note, the supervisors' expectations are quite different. They see students as expected to be having already self-motivation and being problem solvers and be disciplined and innovative, and that they would initiate communications and come up with research problem, already be able to start up and formulate research questions, design and methodology, and that these PhD candidates are already ready to read widely, and they must be independent, mature researchers, or they must even be able to publish 1 or 2 articles, and that they must be dedicated and committed and be able to use supervisors' advice and put effort towards their research work. So what I find here is such a huge disjuncture between the expectations of the students and those of supervisors, which then I find it very important to think of it when we look at the envisaged supervisor-student relationship journey, that there is a huge demand or a need for alignment, and hence the supervisor-student agreement. We have to think thoroughly and not think it can be one size fit all. I think it is very important that the document that guides the supervision, it has to make sure it really starts from the foundations of what are these people's expectations of their relationship and of the journey, and be able to align even from the needs analysis of these two relationships. And then that's where I think effective communication then becomes very important. So the envisaged relationship is where there is an effective communication and there is an approach. The approach to the relationship is with a sense of maturity. And in that manner, it needs to apply general principles of building relationships. For example, you cannot be criticizing a person everything he's doing all the time, and you expect that person is going to think good of you. So it is very important that the very same principles we hold in any other relationship, that you know that whatever that you deposit, positive or negative, you are going to reap at the end. And it's very important to have clarity on relationships breakers and relationship enhancers in the postgrad supervision. Like, for example, if you know that you get irritated by grammatical errors in a document, it's very important that your students know that it's a no-go zone. They have to do spell check grammar, like get to the basics, so that you don't get irritated by things that they could have done at their capacity. I'm just making an example. So it's very important, if the student doesn't put so much value on how much fast the feedback should come, that must come across in the supervision agreement, that if you take 3 or 4 weeks before I get feedback, I'm really getting discouraged. This kind of conversation needs to be done clear. And I think there is a high need to empower our students' assertiveness, because as Amina spoke before about the hierarchy and the difficulties in negotiations of these relationships, hierarchy also play a role, that it affects the transparency and the flattening of the hierarchy and allowing the students to be, or the students to see themselves as equal partners of the relationship. But the envisaged relationships really is the professional and the facilitation of productive meetings, making sure that the meetings, the supervision meetings, are structured and it's clear what goals are they achieving. And I also of the belief that it's important to schedule meetings that only focus on assessing progress or on assessing how the two are relating, because I think we don't pay attention to that. And supervision meetings, they are mainly about talking about the document that those piece of work that would be revised and being worked on. And I think it's important to schedule time to ensure that there is a discussion on progress, on how the other person is feeling throughout the journey of supervision. And that these relationships are really need to be not too personal, but also not too distant. There should be a balance whereby the supervisor is able to be sensitive and inquire about some things at personal level, that the student can be able to tell the supervisor if perhaps there is a death of the family member and is not able to engage with other things, or the PhD work, or the relationship must also not be too personal, that the student may take the supervisor for granted and not be able to have respect on the instructions that are being given. And it's also important to make sure that these envisaged relationships are, the journey has to be enjoyed, and it's an opportunity for both the supervisor and supervisee to appreciate the opportunity to have met and to embark on the journey. So on my side, really, I would like to conclude that it takes 2 or 3 to tango in case of having a supervisor and a co-supervisor. On that note, I actually want to say that while the mental health comes first, but it is very important that as a student, you need both the degree and the mental healthiness. So hence the purpose of today's conversation. Although we have focused on unhealthy relationships, I would really want to say that the supervision relationships, some supervision relationships can be very beautiful, and even those that are difficult, if you put positive effort on them, they can really improve. And I always take that our postgrad students or postgrad relationships can be basis for future collaborations. And it's very important to reflect on what and how, in what manner, in the case that sometimes it happens that as a student, perhaps, or as a supervisor also, you have other issues that are so stressing to you that are other than the postgrad supervision. But because you are already having existing stressors, then it's very easy to think you are stressed by the postgrad journey. Meanwhile, it's an addition to other things that you are experiencing. So it's important to take a step back and ask yourself what exactly is an issue and how is it an issue. And then it's important to ask yourself, in your current relationship, do you think you will feel grateful after graduation? If perhaps you had an issue about having too much pressure, perhaps your supervisor is putting too much pressure on you, was the pressure necessary to give birth to your ultimate goal? Or it was just a non-directed pressure or an unnecessary pressure? Or was it really about the supervision journey or supervision relationship that was a stressor at the time? The reason I'm saying this is because postgrad supervision doesn't just happen. It's happening in our lives, and you are living a life while you are going through the postgrad supervision. And when there is pressure from it, it's happening over and above other things that are already happening in your life. So it's important to step back and start thinking and ask yourself, and be able to identify what is it and how is it being a problem and what you can do about it. And also appreciate then the value. Some people really, even after the rough journey, when they look back and they've attained their degrees and they start realizing that it was a challenge that is similar to the labor pains, that after you've delivered a baby, you are not having the same level of pain as before. By saying that, I'm not meaning to condone the academic bullying. I really don't condone it, but I think at the same time, I would want to encourage students to sit back and ask the same question: what is the purpose of having this relationship, and how one can make the best of it, and also prioritize the studies. And on that note, I'm going to give Amina a chance to conclude her points, her last points. Then we'll open to the floor to have questions and to have comments. But before the questions and comments, we really are going to pose a question on how you think students or supervisors could contribute into redefining the postgrad supervision. And in that section, we really would like everybody to participate. Thank you.
Hello, Amina, can you hear us? Are you sorted now?
Yes, I'm good. My apologies.
Good. Fellows, we apologize for the technical interruptions. This didn't happen. And so, Amina, go for it.
Yeah, no, my apologies, everyone. Load shedding, sometimes electricity also takes your network with you. So I just needed to jump from one place to the next. So, in conclusion from my side, I just really like to echo what Dr. Tenza has said, is that, academia can be a very difficult place. It's a very high-paced context. You're all kind of vying for something. There's something that you're trying to do, which is not necessarily always easy. And especially if you are in a postgrad space, it takes a lot from you in terms of what you need to produce and what is expected from you. And sometimes that differs between the student and the supervisor, So it's always important to be able to reflect on your relationship and how your emotions, thoughts, words, and behavior kind of feed into that relationship dynamic. An academic relationship will teach you things about yourself, and it will teach you things about how you relate with other people. So, I mean, this would go to whether you are a supervisor or you are a student, you know, and how your student makes you feel when they're not doing what you're expecting, you know, it says something about you even, and how your supervisor makes you feel, for example, when they congratulate you and they do, or they say something that validates you, that also says something. And how do we take those bits of our experiences with the other person and make sense of ourselves in the world, you know? So, you know, I mean, for me, what I'm hoping that we can kind of discuss even further is, what does it mean for me as a human being to be in this very high-paced space and need to be able to deliver? And what do I do with some of the uncomfortable feelings? What do I do with the relationship with the person, which, you know, because it's not a personal one, I don't necessarily have the space to go in and say, you make me feel like this, or this space makes me feel like this. What do you do with those discomforts? And then just to kind of emphasize again that the academic journey is just one part of the lived experience, but it will impact your mental health and your mental well-being in different ways, you know, because a person who you may struggle to relate with here, you're going to find them somewhere else, you know. So there's ways that you can find that, use that difficult relationship with your supervisor, with your student, to understand, okay, when I meet the next person who's like this, what am I going to do? How does this person make me feel? How do I then respond? How do I then internalize this person? So essentially from my side, I'm hoping that we're able to just kind of sit with the mental health aspect of being in a space where you need to get things done. So, I mean, academia can be representative of even the workplace or even in difficult family dynamics. But we take these things and these relationships and we think about how they impact us and what we're then going to do when we come across barriers to our own mental health. So I think from here, we can just kind of open up for the discussion.
Yes, Amina, I think that you and Dr. Tenza should lead the thing from here. I am here, but as you can see me, okay, they are not allowing me to show my camera, but I have moved from where I was to also another location because I'm also coordinating another event over there. So I'm just going to hand over to you, but I'm listening in. I'm at the background. If you need anything from me, I mean, just let me know. And I must also say that it was Martin Nimuela who said, I'm going to paraphrase what he said, because this is the time that we want our students to speak up. This is the time we want our supervisors to also speak up. Martin Nimuela, who was a chaplain in then Germany, he says they came for the Protestant. I wasn't a Protestant, so I didn't say anything. They came for the socialist. I wasn't a socialist, so I didn't make any comment. And then say, finally, they came for me. And when they came for me, there was nobody to speak up for me because I had watched them take all the other people. We cannot let the education experience be one of the reasons why we students suffer in silence. The statistics is very alarming. That shows that out of every 10 PhD students you take, there is a chance that 4 of them are becoming chronic alcoholics. I know people that went to do PhD and they came back with high blood pressure. These are some of the reasons why we don't want to lose our talent, the people that will set the pace for the next phase of African development, for the next phase of global engagement, to be the very people that have been endangered or that have been damaged by way of the supervisory process. So please, it is very important that we open up to some of these things. Looking and listening to you talk about academic bullying and who is a bully, I think I have bullied people and I've also been bullied. So I think now I'm beginning to look at it and say that, oh, I've done a lot of things covertly and I've done it overtly. How do I now take these things and try to systematically apply it in my life so that when my students leave me, they will know that they'll still have a place to come? Because this postgraduate thing goes beyond. I was applying for a funding in the US the other day. They requested that my PhD supervisor write a recommendation letter. So this thing even goes beyond just being a supervisor and a student. So let us leverage this. On that note, I want to hand over to you, but I'm still at the background. If you need me, just give me a shout. Thank you so much.
Okay, colleagues, you can just switch on your unmute yourself if you want to speak, because this is really.
And also, there are some questions in the chat. And may I ask my technical team to please, you can now set everybody to unmute, and then you can unmute yourself, and then you can ask questions. But Whilst they are doing that, please, can you just also look at the chat, and also there are questions that have been asked, and see how you can address it. And also the academics that are in the meeting today, please, we need your contribution. We need your experience. Experiences are not transferable, but these are things that we can actually leverage from. And we know that there are people who are on this platform that have been supervising for 10, 15, 20 years. That experience is what we need to be able to make things happen. Thank you a lot.
Okay, so from my side, because I dropped off, if there were any questions before them, I wouldn't be able to see. But I do just want to reflect on what was just said, even about, I totally honor a person who's able to say, I have been bullied and I might have bullied as well. And I think that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to put that in, that signs that you could be the bully. It's important for us to be able to reflect on that. But another thing that we've learned just generally in society is that violence is cyclical. So if I get assaulted, something has happened to me, I become traumatized, my way of seeing myself in the world changes. A lot of times people then start to pick up a sense of, I need to protect myself all the time, And because that is how you now understand the world, that I need to protect myself, I need to defend myself from the other. You find that you go into your position of power with that same lens. So when somebody comes in, you then project your own feelings and your own experiences onto the next person, So even just being able to just kind of reflect on that and think about it and say, you know what, I need to go back and think about what's been happening here. You will find that, okay, maybe it started here. Maybe these are the things that happened. And this is how I internalized this bullying. And then this is how I then started to act out the same kind of bullying. And essentially, this is why we have a lot of toxic organizational spaces as well. It's because of that lack of self-awareness that I've been hurt here. And I need to ensure that I'm not replicating that hurt in the next person. So, I totally honor a person who's able to just kind of sit with that and say, this is how I've also been contributing to the problem, and we need to be able to do this. It's not just about saying my supervisor is a bully and this person needs to step down, we have to then start to see, then when do we then go and displace our own internal difficulties as well?
There is a question, there is a hand. It just say participant. Can we have that hand? Please unmute yourself. You can unmute yourself and speak. Just say participant, it doesn't say the name.
Maybe I don't know if I have hosting rights. Okay, to unmute the person.
Okay. We can deal with the question so long, Amina.
Yeah. Do you want to go first about how do we handle sexual harassment? I think there's some things that are not negotiables, so sexual harassment is one of those things that are not negotiable. It's not one of the things where you look at policy. And I'm always going to lean towards that. If you are experiencing some sort of discomfort or what you would identify as sexual harassment, that is something that you go towards policy and you report. I think this negotiating, maybe they didn't intend to. Generally, if somebody makes you feel uncomfortable and if you feel you can't address it with that person, go to the next person who has a sense of maybe more power in your department and somebody who you feel like you can trust, or try to find out what the HR policies are about that kind of thing. And you go and you speak about it, and you go and you speak about it as openly and as transparently as you can, because we can't act like sexual harassment isn't something that happens, especially looking at the power dynamic. So you'll find that even if the person is not intending to violate you in any way or another, their unawareness of the power that they have and what it could be doing in the space is very, it's something that would need to be addressed. So for me, I'm always like, if there is sexual harassment, please go and attend to it. Don't silence it. Don't try to reason it out on your own. Find a space, a safe space where you can go and say, this is what is happening. How do I address this so that it is reported, so that I am no longer being violated?
Yeah. Thank you, Amina. I agree with you. Like I said, how I defined a healthy relationship, I brought in the issue that I always measure it against whether it is, for me to measure if it's a viable relationship, it has to be activities towards the relationship should be directing us to achieve the main goal of the supervision relationship. So when there is sexual harassment, it's already an evidence that that those kind of behaviors are not really directed to the purpose of the relationship. And yeah, if you're very uncomfortable with the situation, it's very important that you report. There are policies in place that will allow you as a student to be reallocated to a different person that you can be comfortable to work with. But colleagues, I really would like us to be free. Please let us be free. Let's not be tense. And as long as you don't mention who and where you've experienced what you've experienced, or you don't even need to share about your experience. Maybe you can just reflect from the conversation as to what do you think a student or a supervisor could contribute to better relationships. Just unmute yourself and participate. I know there are students here and there are academics that are currently supervising, and we really appreciate your inputs. Thank you.
Absolutely. I see that there's also another question, another very nice question in the chat box. Maybe while people are just kind of gathering their questions, what happens in situations where the situation is being misinterpreted as bullying? For example, some people are more loud than others in terms of voice. So every time you talk, there's a misinterpretation that you are fighting. So my response there, so I'm going to be honest, because we need to be free in this space. You know, I'm going to be honest that if this kind of question makes me ask, who is it being misinterpreted by, right? So do you feel that people are misinterpreting you? And if that's the case, it's important to then go and say, okay, I noticed that you get a little bit tense when you're around me. I noticed that you maybe feel afraid when I speak. Maybe in my culture, we speak very loud as part of our culture, which is just the way that we are, you know. But you going and reaching to the person and saying, you know what, I noticed a sense of fear there. What's happening? It allows you to bridge that gap so that they don't need to be it doesn't need to be a misinterpretation. Communication is very important, you know. And if you see that somebody isn't comfortable and your intention is not to make them uncomfortable, then you can take it upon yourself to start the conversation about the discomfort. The thing about bullying is that it can be covert and it can be overt, and they can be part of my personality and the way I do things that can make a person feel intimidated, belittled, humiliated. And as a person, for example, if I have a sense of power, maybe if I'm the supervisor, I need to be cognizant of the fact that how I am in my way of being could make the next person feel a particular way, you know? So if you know that you have a position of power, then you kind of give that olive branch, you know? When a person justifies their actions a lot, it kind of communicates that they're not prepared to work on them to accommodate the next person. So that is just my response, particularly in relation to that one.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Amina. And any question?
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
What will you advise that we do if I am a student and then I have the supervisor who always says it is my way or the highway?
Can I just contribute to a question? Can everyone hear me?
Please. Yes.
I think I missed the first part of the talk, unfortunately. I will talk from the perspective of a supervisor, a novice supervisor, and someone who recently completed the PhD. I think it's important to set the scene for the relationship, for the supervisor and supervisee relationship. What happens, in my view, I'm taking from my lived experience, is at the onset of the supervisor-supervisee relationship, there is often a need to understand the connect humanly between the two parties. And also from the supervisor's side, I think it is important to understand the vulnerabilities that that this student who is maybe entering into academia, they actually don't know what they need to do. They don't know the structure or the rationale for supervision. They're quite unclear about what they need to do, what kind of research design, whatever they want to do. They're really vulnerable at that stage. I think having a good discussion, which unfortunately doesn't happen often, about the terms and conditions and the expectations between the supervisor and supervisee can actually determine the relationship going ahead. Now, the supervisors often at that time realize the vulnerability of the student, but maybe may not be in a good position to acknowledge that because the student is growing, is maybe needs a bit of nurturing to stand on their feet. I always use the analogy of an infant that needs support to stand up and then to make their first step. Now, the bullying part of it often results from the supervisee unmuting themselves because of their vulnerability at that stage, maybe overlooking some of the antecedents that if you were if their confidence levels had grown, because there's also a level for confidence when you enter into academia. Confidence builds up as you go ahead. Even having that intellectual discussion or debate with your supervisor, agreeing to disagree to move forward, and also the supervisor having to look at the person that they've nurtured from that level of vulnerability going ahead, acknowledging that this person is actually getting somewhere and having that positive feedback takes the whole connection to another level where the supervisor and the supervisee have a clear relationship that, like Dr. Tenza said, that it's good to know what from the human nature of the human side of the supervisor. What do they find difficult to cope with? My supervisors were really good, accommodative when I said I cannot do this on this even deadline, but they couldn't cope with a minor grammatical error in my draft, and I knew between the two of them, I've got two personalities. One, the first supervisor doesn't like ABCD, and the second supervisor doesn't. So you need to strike now a connection, an understanding, should I say, of the two parties that you are dealing with, and that can, unfortunately, with the level I mean, the center of my comment is acknowledging the vulnerability of the student at the onset of the supervisor relationship. The supervisee can now mute themselves, even if they actually realize that they should be speaking up on certain things. And from that time going forward, the relationship may lose direction, as you rightly said, Dr. Tenza, that the importance of knowing that the relationship, what was the purpose of this relationship, and what does the other part and this part want to achieve in this relationship. So lose sight of that very important core issue in this relationship, and unfortunately some of the actions or the responses of the supervisor may slowly drift into the parameters of bullying. That's an addition for me, not a question.
Thank you, Themba. And any other comment is welcome. Thank you very much, Dr. Themba, for your input. So those who just joined, we are just having an open floor on contributions. What can the student or a supervisor contribute towards redefining supervision, postgraduate supervision relationships to make them better? And you can draw from your previous experience, or you can share from just your thoughts of what you think can be done.
Maybe just to kind of chime in with what Dr. Themba said, I really like that element that, you know, there are things that his supervisors would let go. Then there are things that the supervisors were like, you know, and what I was listening to is the ability to see a person as not all good or not all bad, but to see the person as the human being who can tolerate certain things, and some things they just find very difficult, you know. And part of engaging with a supervisor or supervisors, which, you know, might become difficult, is having to navigate those little things and seeing that, okay, if something happens in my personal life and I let them know, they're so accommodating of it. But the typos, they seem very, you know, strict about that. How do I make sense of that? How do I then acknowledge that, okay, fine, this is an area that I will work on those typos, because I know that there's a sense of relationship that we have. And it's not just them trying to punish me. So knowing that, or identifying that they're not either all good or all bad, but like a mixture of like different colors, some good parts, some bad parts, some in between, will really then help for you to continue in your journey without internalizing this as a completely difficult space. But I think there was somebody who also had wanted to speak up. Please do go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah. Good evening. It's evening this side. Yeah, the name is Tapin Pasha. So I just want maybe to hear your views in terms of maybe this. Let me make a disclaimer before that I've not experienced this. It's not related to me, but I'm seeing a trend of such a thing where maybe a student is offered funding by the supervisor, and then the supervisor, you know, kind of request them to do consulting work that is outside the scope of their research work. You know, maybe the supervisor is doing consulting work for some external company, which they get money for, but because now the student is being offered funding by the supervisor, so the supervisor is kind of exploiting the socioeconomic vulnerabilities of the student now, and which now, to me, it says equally someone higher might know of this. Then how does the student deal with this? Why I'm asking this question is because it leads to a point where students, if they were to get a job outside, they will leave because they will see that, no, here I'm being frustrated, I'm not even progressing in terms of my research work, you know, and we tend to lose more researchers in that kind of a way. So I don't know, maybe if you can just put in some views on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mpasha. And thanks for taking bravery to speak in this platform. It's a safe space. We don't really care about the context or the names. We really want to start. Like I said, when we started, we're just scratching the top of the surface, the conversation around academic bullying and supervision relationships. They are difficult conversations in the academic space, and this is just one of the steps towards getting people to be familiar with this kind of conversation. So the question on how do you then deal with an academic who has offered funding to a particular student, and then because of that funding agreement, then the academic keep on asking the student to do external duties that are outside the student's scope. So my response to that, I think the agreement for funding has to also have had the conditions of what would be the student's duties towards the funding. And if the duties now of having to go read or do additional work for that is outside what has been agreed upon, I think if there is leadership in that particular entity, the student must be able to be free to speak to the academic and say, there is the situation. Of course, I've done this and that towards the task that you've asked me to do. But what I'm observing is that I'm not able to achieve, I have no capacity to achieve my goals, which are postgrad studies. And now that I'm given the additional task. So that is kind of a nice way to say your capacity is limited. You are not a candidate that can do anything beyond what your duties are. And I think a reasonable supervisor should be able to then to realize that the students' research, postgrad research cannot be compromised because of the external duties. So it also speaks to the ability to be able to speak up, which sometimes our contextual background in very common in Africa, that it's very difficult for the hierarchy between the supervisor and the supervisee. It's kind of make it difficult for somebody to speak up. But like I said, when I defined my definition of a healthy supervision relationship is the relationship where there is respect, there is professionalism, there is an evaluation of progress, and they are all activities of that are contributing in the relationship are towards the achievement of the stated goal. So anything that distracts you from the stated goal, I mean, somebody asked me the other day, when do I know to get out of the unhealthy relationship? The minute you see no progress towards your postgraduate studies, every time you are talking about the same thing, there is no movement. It's a time to rethink the value of being way in the space of that particular supervision. Thank you.
I like the way you choose your words. You know what I'm taking from what you're saying as well is that, you know, especially where you feel like this person's intentionally exploiting. So he used the word exploit, you know, so especially when you feel like this person is exploiting you, you already feel unsafe around that person. So it's good to use safe words, you know, like the way Dr. Tenza has spoken about it. You choose your words and you put them out there and you kind of see what comes back. Because typically what happens when you start to feel exploited, you know, the anger starts to build up, the rage, you know, and you can become combative. And while it's very important to speak out for yourself, you also want your results. You don't want to find yourself in a place where then you are responding to how a person has treated you and now it is working against you. So just kind of being able to just kind of package yourself and say, you know, I can't repeat it because there was a lovely way you said, this will impact my progress. You know, how is somebody then going to argue with that? Because then they're not able to reach into like your tone or your manner of approach. They only have your nicely packaged words, and they're then in a corner. They have to attend to what you have said. Yeah.
I like Mr.
Okay,
Mpashe.
go ahead.
I just like how Mr. Mpashe expressed his question. I think all of us, we can say, put a disclaimer, it has not happened to you, but just bring the scenario on the table so we can be able to engage with it. And yes, then we all don't have to think it's attached to you, and whoever listened to this would know it wasn't attached to you, but we really want to engage with this academic bullying monster and deal with it and get our students freed and our academics freed too, because I mean, we may think of the academic bullying from the angle of how students feel being bullied, but academics are also accountable for the progress of the student. And then how do we draw a line in a situation where Amina described the symptoms, you may be a bully, as that you tend to be pushy? Then one could ask himself if when a supervisor is asking for submission, at what phase then do we say this academic is bullying by asking for submission? As then one could describe that as being pushy, and one could say is being bullied because the supervisor is asking for the work that needs to be delivered.
Okay. I was gonna say something. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, just much.
I actually want to say that we are living in a generation where people require things that require effort. People want it with no effort. We should also be able to say or distinguish between your supervisor demanding the best from you from a situation where you are being bullied. I think that it's a very blurred line, and if we are not careful, we would tend to say things. Because I wrote a post on LinkedIn the other time where there were students, a lot of, I'll say, VIT students came and they says, yeah, UJ is taking care of their student, and then they are forcing VIT student to go through the meal. And I'm like, but we need to establish certain things. Genuinely, I believe that your supervisor have your best interest at heart. However, we need to see that what does that mean to you, so that you can be able to use that as your North Star or your compass. And also you yourself need to demand a lot out of yourself, because this PhD or this master's that you're doing, it will just be another degree if you don't really apply yourself in the process. And that is why I will go back to say, for instance, every university has the supervisor-student agreement, where you need to agree and say, look, this is what we want to do. This is where we want to go. How can we get there? What are the expectations? I mean, Dr. Tenza talks about the expectations of the supervisor for the student, that the student should be self-motivated, and he gives us some things that we need to consider. But after you've done all these things, you need to sit and ask yourself, why am I doing this PhD? What is in this for me? I'm telling you that for the past 2 months, I have been running around various countries, and I can tell you for a fact that a lot of the things that people do out there, they are self-motivated. I interviewed about 6 different PhD students, and I said, why did you opt to do a PhD? And then the questions in those developed countries have always been the same. I saw a problem and I wanted to solve it. And then I approach a supervisor and say, this is what I want to do. But when you come to the side of the world which we are in, especially when it comes to this side of Africa, a lot of the funding comes from the supervisor. So the expectations is from the supervisor, and then the deliverables is also from the supervisor. But first, When you are doing any postgraduate degree, the deliverable is not your research report. The deliverable is you. So if you want to finish that degree and become very bitter, you want to finish that degree and become a monster. I have seen 3 professors around this Africa, I won't mention the universities, and the way they were treated during their PhD, they have reinforced that process. And so they bullied people, And I like what Amina said. When you have been bullied for so long, when you see a least opportunity, you want to look relevant. So you want to impress upon people certain values which may not align with their thinking. And in that process, it is my way or the highway. And it can happen like that. What am I trying to say? As a student or as an academic, you need to take stock of how you relate with your students or how your students relate with you. My professor that is in the US, he creates an atmosphere where it is the views of the student, carefully guided by his experience, that makes their work look great. So if you're an academic on this platform, I'm saying to you, let us not take the easy way out. Let us become very systematic, very strategic, and very deliberate with how we train people. Because you may be saying you want to give them a PhD, but that is a human being. And their feelings matter. How they perceive you after their PhDs also matter. And if we are going to do it well, it means that we will be able to say, I mean, you can confidently then boast and say, I was supervised by so and so. And this is what I get out of it. So that is one thing that I want us to look at it. And there is no one fits all. And I mean, all the 2 presenters have mentioned that you need to also study your supervisor as a book. You need to know what triggers them. And I was with anytime I see an email flying around from my supervisor, I know that this is not a good time. And also try to understand what they need, because they are also people. Otherwise, anger can easily be transferred to you, which you know nothing about. So I just want to use this opportunity to thank my host. We could have gone on and on, but time has taken the better part of us. But on this point, because I have some few announcements to do, and then we can bring curtains. But before I do that, I want to welcome the 2 presenters for a minute each to give us their parting words. I know that in future we are going to reorganize this where Amina will come and deal with the mental health issue. It is one of the things that I'm very passionate about. We train people and they go into the world sick. I think it is Theodore Roosevelt says, when you train a man in the mind and not in morals, you introduce a menace to society. So we train people in the head, but we don't train them well. So they go out there and they become problems. They go out there and mess people's future up. They go out there and torment people because they were also tormented. So I'm welcoming the 2 of you to give us 1 minute each. Then we make some announcements and then we can close today's program. Amina, you want to go first? Or we should reverse it. You went first, so Dr. Tenza should go first, and then however you want to do it.
You can go first, Amina.
I should go first?
Yes.
Okay, no problem. So I mean, firstly, thank you to everybody for being in this. You know, when we share insights, you know, we contribute to experiential learning, you know. Even for me, listening to people's comments and stuff like that, I'm also kind of thinking, and also, you know, just having the space to be able to discuss this. I'm hoping that people are taking things away and able to just kind of reflect on their own experiences, you know. One thing about academia is it's just one aspect of life, but it's a very high pressure aspect of your lived experience, you know. So while that's happening, life is still happening around you. And sometimes you are going through things, and sometimes your supervisor is going through things, and they might be quite tense with you, or you might be quite tense, but it's always always look at how your relationship is growing and how your relationship is dynamic. So that's my invitation to everybody here, to just kind of always reflect on yourself and reflect on the process, and then reflect on how you are understanding the next person. And it will help you to find like a sense of balance, because I think essentially in academia, while you have to get through the work, the research, you also need to have a sense of life balance as well.
Thank you, Amina. Thank you very much, colleagues. I really appreciate your being here and this opportunity to share. It's really been so amazing to be here. I would like to thank our host, Dr. Desmond and Dr. Abioye and Labin Gate at large. And I want to thank all the audience. I see colleagues from different countries and including SA, and I'm very excited to see that we really are very interested to be in engagement with this important topic on postgrad supervision and academic bullying within postgrad supervision. So for me, I really would like to conclude by saying I still really envisage the changed supervision experiences for our students. And I really think there is something that we can do. And my take is that postgrad supervision relationship, if we take it as serious as any other relationship that we value, then we would each do the things that we're supposed to do, or that we usually do when we express interest to any other relationship. By so saying is that then you start counting your battles, you start knowing where you channel your energy, which issues you take them serious, which issues you overlook, and then you will put your best foot forward, and you'll always be respectful and or prioritize activities that are towards the relationship. And if there's something you are not comfortable with, you would quickly address it before it's kind of create an erosion inside your heart and end up getting you to a hatred stage between you and the supervisor and affect the whole journey at all. And I also want to emphasize that at times it's very important to think about how you value your degree. If really your relationship is affecting your progress and is unrepairable, it's important to make a decision to step out and change the supervisor. And if it's something that you can stand and get over to the end, then it's also important that you realize that your degree may be more important, gaining your degree may be more important than trying to fight the relationship. So it's also decisions that you make as a student. And on that note, I really would like to congratulate all the students amongst us here who are busy pursuing their degrees. And you must know that as academics, there are academics who really think good of you and who would like to be of support, and I'm one of them. And I'm really very passionate about supporting postgrad student journey. And you can follow my posts on LinkedIn. I've put my contacts, and I'm also running research private practice at the same time, and I'm also doing the global mentorship program. So you are all welcome to send me communication if you need some help, so you can be supported towards your journey, and we can dance for your graduation one day.
Graduation. Thank you so much. And in July, she's also organizing a workshop that, I mean, if you go to LinkedIn, I will send the things to all of you too. First of all, I want to use this opportunity to thank all my presenters and for the resource people. Yeah, it might take 1 hour, 45 minutes for them to show up here and talk, but it took months and months of preparation. For that, we are very grateful. I also want to thank the Labin Gate for helping us, for giving us the platform where we can connect together as researchers, as people that will drive the change that we look out for. I also want to make these few announcements. So Labingate organizes conferences, annual conferences. It is called the International Conference on Sustainable Engineering and Materials Development. And this year it's going to come off from the 28th to the 30th of November 2022. All our manuscripts goes through a double-blind peer review process, and then it gets published by Scopus and Web of Science indexed journals. This is an opportunity. The idea is that you see in this Labingate as just something that is springing forth, but then do not despise little beginning. The idea is the Labingate will become a household name, and then we can have our own journal outlets that will become a robust piece or a tool that we can communicate research to the outer world. So please join us in these things to go. We would the information will be sent to you. We have your emails. We should look at it and see where you feature, because we are talking about sustainable development. We are talking about materials engineering. Look at it, look at the core and see what it is there that you can also contribute to. May I also invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can be able to get any updates when we put them there. And I also want to thank all of you for your time. I know we have gone overboard for about 18 minutes, but it's all worth it. This is an opportunity for us to share information, and we do this for free. And we are also trying to make knowledge go viral. And on this note, I want to thank you all for coming. And I'm so excited. Anytime I'm called upon to do this, it's a time so that we can shape your minds, we can train people, we can share ideas. We are here. The point with Africa, I'm told, is that those who have ideas don't have power, and those who have power don't have ideas. But if we can bring all these people into one atmosphere, then it means that we can collectively harness our individual strength and turn that into something that can work. They said that united we stand, divided we fall. On this note, I want to thank you all for coming once again. And I'm grateful to be your host this particular morning, evening, afternoon, depending on where you're watching us from. On this note, once again, I want to thank you. And I will make sure that this thing is sent to you. If you want to link up with any of our resource people, they have their details sent to you, but we can also formally send them to you. On this note, Dr. Tenza, we thank you so much for giving us time. And I hope that this thing that you are doing, you continue to do it. Do not look at what people will say and what people will do, but continue doing it. And that goes to our sister Amina too. Keep pushing this thing. Keep pushing. Let's keep pushing it. And collectively, we can change the narrative of Africa and make it a beautiful place, and make Africa a baby that we can take care of, and a mother that will look after us when we are grown and out of age. On this note, I thank you all for coming, and I'm looking forward to see you at our next webinar, which will be communicated to us. And also, please make a date with us one more time when we discuss the issues that affect life, Africa, the world. Thank you so much for coming, and bye for now.
Hi, Amina.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Hello, dear research colleagues. What are the challenges you are facing? Are you a researcher? Are you in need of the nearest laboratory with state-of-art equipment to execute your project? Are you currently planning to contact a laboratory or research host for your research visit or bench work? Are you a laboratory? Are you looking for increased research patronage and visibility of your laboratory? Are you interested in establishing robust research collaboration both locally and internationally? Generate revenues on laboratory equipment and sustainability of equipment maintenance? Are you an equipment manufacturer or buyer? Labingate Incorporated, Canada, is here with an unparalleled solution by introducing Labingate Digitalized Laboratory Innovation, LDLI, a one-stop platform to meet all your research needs. LDLI is a user-friendly platform with a capacity of over 10 million equipment, more than 100,000 laboratories, more than 5 million researchers, offering effective networking across the globe. Execute your related research transactions with ease today by signing up on www.labingate.com/register. We look forward to having you on our platform. Labingate, the gateway to world's laboratories. Hello, dear research colleagues. What are the challenges you are facing? Are you a researcher? Are you in need of the nearest laboratory with state-of-art equipment to execute your project? Are you currently planning to contact a laboratory or research host for your research visit or bench work? Are you a laboratory? Are you looking for increased research patronage and visibility of your laboratory? Are you interested in establishing robust research collaboration both locally and internationally? Generate revenues on laboratory equipment and sustainability of equipment maintenance? Are you an equipment manufacturer or buyer? Labingate Incorporated, Canada, is here with an unparalleled solution by introducing Labingate Digitalized Laboratory Innovation, LDLI, a one-stop platform to meet all your research needs. LDLI is a user-friendly platform with a capacity of over 10 million equipment, more than 100,000 laboratories, more than 5 million researchers, offering effective networking across the globe. Execute your related research transactions with ease today by signing up on www.labingate.com/register. We look forward to having you on our platform. Labingate, the gateway to world's laboratories.
Are you a researcher? Are you currently struggling to identify the right equipment for your research? Are you having challenges locating the equipment? Then Labingate Incorporated has the solutions to your problems. Labingate is an online platform with a capacity of more than 10 million equipments, 100,000 laboratories, and 5 million researchers in 5 continents across the globe. Visit www.labingate.com to be one of the million researchers on the platform. You can also create an account with us at Laboratories to make your services and equipment more visible to researchers.
Hello, dear research colleagues. What are the challenges you are facing? Are you a researcher? Are you in need of the nearest laboratory with state-of-art equipment to execute your project? Are you currently planning to contact a laboratory or research host for your research visit or bench work? Are you a laboratory? Are you looking for increased research patronage and visibility of your laboratory? Are you interested in establishing robust research collaboration both locally and internationally? Generate revenues on laboratory equipment and sustainability of equipment maintenance. Are you an equipment manufacturer or buyer? Labingate Incorporated, Canada, is here with an unparalleled solution by introducing Labingate Digitalized Laboratory Innovation, LDLI, a one-stop platform to meet all your research needs. LDLI is a user-friendly platform with a capacity of over 10 million equipment, more than 100,000 laboratories, more than 5 million researchers, offering effective networking across the globe. Execute your related research transactions with ease today by signing up on www.labingate.com/register. We look forward to having you on our platform. Labingate, the gateway to world's laboratories. Hello, dear research.